All right. All right, good morning. Well, it's a little bit later in the morning, and everyone is, I'm sure, already getting a little tired, but it's okay. We still have a whole day, so. Thank you, John. So as John said, I've been with Ancient Faith for a long time, about 9 years now, podcasting. So I was just in Dr. Nicole Rokas's session, and she was talking about having, limited runs of podcasts. And I'm wondering, well, when does mine end? Because, we're never. Okay. So I started thinking about that because it's been about 9 years, and it's been a great blessing to be able to post the sermons and also later the video series, which I know has been on hiatus for a bit, for about a year, because I've been working on my thesis, but it will be coming back, I promise. So I do thank John and everybody at Ancient Faith for asking me to speak. So this is kind of a little bit of a different talk than, I guess, your average ones, because as you can see in the roster there, wonderful speakers, and everybody is talking about how to make podcasts and how to write books and how to be creative, and my talk has nothing to do with that. Last night, Frederica Matthews-Green, she mentioned in her talk that she was writing books, especially at the beginning of her kind of Orthodox journey as a writer, and she was writing it for people who are not Orthodox, and yet all the Orthodox people were buying them, people who she assumed knew all this stuff, right? And so this was kind of like along the lines of, what I'm talking about today, and what has been my focus, this title of Re-Catechism, which is something that it's not just a program that I kind of started a long time ago back in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is, for those of you who are from the States, that's just north of North Dakota. It's really cold up there. It's minus 40 Celsius, but from what I hear, because I don't know anything about Fahrenheit up in Canada, right? From what I hear, when it gets that cold, it's also minus 40 Fahrenheit. So it's that cold up there. So that was my first parish, and this kind of Re-Catechism program I had started. And so, John had asked me to speak about Re-Catechism, preaching to the older brother. So, this is something that is very near to my heart. So, I wondered, why they asked me to speak, because, I have been podcasting for a long time, and a lot of times, because I've served two parishes for the last 11 years that I've been a priest, they've been very heavily ethnic parishes, Greek Orthodox parishes, where the majority of the parish has been, like, over 85% has been very first generation Greeks, right, coming to Canada. And so my sermons have been often geared towards the so-called cradle Orthodox, more so than towards converts, towards people who are coming into the faith at a later date, right? So I know Bobby had always told me, it's like, Father, your sermons are good on Ancient Faith because, most of the content on Ancient Faith is geared towards non-Orthodox coming in or newly baptized Orthodox, right? And that's wonderful because it's an evangelical mission that Ancient Faith has. And so my sermons often cater towards the big brother, the one who's already there, who's been kind of, been growing up in the faith since a young age, and, should know the things, as Frederica said, about the faith and the basics of the faith, but for some reason we don't. And so how do we deal with that? And so this has kind of been my main struggle over the last decade. So I started podcasting for AFR back in January 2010, so 9 years ago, and this talk was posted. This talk, when it's actually posted, will be my 430th iSermon, so it's been a long run. I was looking up, a little bit of the history of AFR, and I noticed on their Wikipedia page that although it was founded by John Maddox in 2004, and it wasn't until 2008 when it merged with Conciliar Press, and that it really began to hit its stride around 2008, 2009. It got really, really popular, exploded all over the internet, thousands and thousands of hits and downloads. In 2011, they were already hitting 200,000 downloads per month, right? So it was already huge back then. And Bobby Maddox back then did a survey of the listenership, and he found out that overwhelmingly it was converts who were listening to Ancient Faith. It was the majority. It was like a 3-to-1, right? So that was interesting to see. And so you kind of get an idea of kind of who's coming to Ancient Faith and who's listening. This is in stark contrast to, I guess, my experience as a priest and as a podcaster for Ancient Faith. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on in Canada, not because it's not relevant to the States, it is, and you'll see how. But I want to give you a snapshot because it is a snapshot of most Orthodox immigrants who come to both the States and to Canada. It doesn't matter when the era was and what they experience, and also how that affects us as content creators, as preachers, as catechists, as writers, right? Because we have to take these things into account when we are teaching, right? And depending on the demographics that we have. And so, you know, in contrast to many of our excellent content creators at AFR, I'm a cradle Orthodox priest. I've served the two heavily ethnic parishes, as I said. And in Canada, the church, the Greek Orthodox Church, is a much younger version of what you have here in the States, right? So in Canada, the majority of the Orthodox faithful are either immigrants or us who are first generation. So both my parents were born in Greece. Most Antiochians, Serbian, Ukrainian, all their parents were born in the old countries. It's very strange. Whereas in the States, you have like third, fourth generation Orthodox Christians now. They may identify as Serbian, Ukrainian, Coptic, right? But they speak full English now. They've integrated, they've assimilated, and really their ethnic languages are kind of going by the wayside. And they've also kind of integrated into American culture and to a certain degree Canadian culture, but in a much less degree. And so, you know, something that's already happened in the States that hasn't happened in Canada is that I've noticed in the States, and of course this is a generalization, is that Orthodox Christians, even the cradle ones, they've kind of made a decision as the generations have gone by. And they've made a decision, thank God, from what I've seen, to emphasize more the gospel over their ethnic heritage. Now, of course, we have those problems. Of course, there's cultural and there's Orthodox identity crisis in all parishes, but more so in the States, the gospel is paramount, right? And so there is a much more openness to non-ethnic Orthodox converts coming in. Whereas in Canada, it's still very much a lot of cultural ghettos, as we call them up there, right? Everybody's still stuck in their own little world, right? And so it's a very different reality. So the most staggering problem is, from my experience, has been lack of Orthodox education. Right? Especially adult education, which is where my focus is, not so much youth. Although I did start off as a youth worker, and I was the National Youth Director for quite some time. But from what I see is that, and as Frederica mentioned, the adult Orthodox, cradle Orthodox, don't really know their faith very well. And so a lot of the content that all of you are producing and that we're producing, a lot of times we have in our mind that it's for non-Orthodox or for neophytes in the faith, and a bunch of cradle Orthodox are reading it, right? And they're like, oh, we never knew this. We didn't know any of this, right? So it's kind of interesting. So the reasons for this, like the reason why there's such a low level of education are many. The majority of Orthodox Christians in North America, especially present-day Canada, consists of European and Middle Eastern immigrants who came to start a new life. With them, they brought their culture and their faith. However, this faith, although it was very strong, was never cultivated or nurtured in a pedagogical way. A lot of them, they came when they were 12 years old, 13 years old. My parents, they came to Canada. My mother was 12. My father was 14. They went through university, high school and university in Canada. They got degrees. They're fluent in English. And yet, their spiritual education kind of stopped at the moment they came to Canada. Because they came here, and a lot, like most immigrants, they worked really, really hard because they had nothing. Not a lot of time for church or for Sunday schools or for other things. They established churches, but they would kind of just go out of cultural obligation. And so this is why a lot of times for a very large Orthodox demographic, we see that their faith is, and this is not to denigrate them, their faith is strong, but it's infantile. It's like a 12-year-old's faith. Right? Very black and white, right? This is the way we do things. There's a God, there isn't a God. We go to church, we do these things. We don't ask questions. We don't ask the priest questions. We don't change a lot of things. And so it's very, very difficult to discuss with this type of generation, right? It's very hard to kind of like not introduce new things, but rather to attempt to even to correct mistakes or traditions that may not be very Orthodox, right? So they came when they were young. They grew, financially. They grew socially. They grew, professionally. But they didn't grow spiritually. They grew to a certain degree, but most of the education was whatever they had in the old country. So the early priests in North America also had to face the same problem. So a lot of the early priests, they had the same issue. They came here. Some of them were educated. Some were not. A lot of them were ordained here out of necessity without any theological education, and they did the best they could. They worked really hard, tried to grow their communities, tried to serve their people, and yet a lot of them have no official formal Orthodox training. Right? It's whatever they remembered from the village or from their parents. Some of them, their fathers were priests, and so on and so on. And so for a lot of the priests of a certain generation, especially in Canada, this is not as relevant in the States, but we do see it a lot in Canada, they may have strong faith, some of them may be even educated from the old country, but they lack the skills to translate that information to the local population. So they had difficulty with language, but furthermore, even beyond that, even if they could speak excellent English, they had difficulty understanding the culture. You know, so like, just even the way we speak, you know, the idioms that we use and the slang and things like that, you know, using, you know, pop culture references and things like that, things that we just do naturally, who were born here, a lot of them, they had difficulty relating to the younger generation, who were born in the States and Canada. And so there's been this divide. It's really, really difficult for them to discuss things like, you know, sometimes, you know, you talk to certain priests and they don't even know what a podcast is, right? Or you talk to them about bioethical issues and they're not up to date with it because it's not part of their realm of that generation, right? And so that caused a big problem as well. And so, you know, when it comes to education, you know, just like here in the States, a few generations ago, they fell back on kind of like the classic, you know, ways of educating, right? Have a good Sunday school, right? Because that's where you dump your kids during liturgy, so that they can get their religion. This is the kind of the mindset, the old mindset. And, you know, try to have good sermons if you can, try to educate the people. But beyond that, there was nothing for a very long time. And so this kind of world, this new world of print and digital media and podcasting and all this kind of stuff is very, very new. And beyond that, even like not just educating the adults, but the youth, again, such an emphasis on youth programs. I have lots of youth programs, as if the youth programs are gonna save us, right? They're gonna somehow, the youth of the future, right? This is what we hear all the time. I really hate. I don't hate anything in life, except waking up in the middle of the night when the kids are hungry or something. But I hate that term, you know, the youth of the future. Right? It's this coined term. Everybody, all jurisdictions use it. And I always say that, you know, that's like saying that the youth are nothing because the future hasn't happened yet. It's theoretical, right? We make the future. And so to say that the youth are not now, they're not part of the present reality of the Church of Christ, the body of Christ, is to say that they're irrelevant at this moment. They'll be relevant someday in the future. And so we put a lot of emphasis, cross jurisdictions, on youth programs, right? And we had wonderful youth programs, especially in the 90s, right? Many of us, you know, were younger in the 90s, right? And they had big youth conference and things like that. Most of those kids don't go to church now. So what happened, right? So what have I learned, like in the last 11 years of ministry, 20 years of camp ministry, because we have a thriving camp metamorphosis program across the country in Canada, which I helped start about 20 years ago, and 6 years as the National Youth Director. So what have I learned? I've learned that all these programs, they don't really work, okay? Neither the special youth programs, nor the phenomenal Sunday schools, or engaging with youth groups, or gimmicky youth sermons, or super successful summer camps, none of them make a dent in the problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't have these programs. You should have them, right? They're really, really good. But they are supporting programs to a core issue that's not being addressed, right? I'll give you one example, since the most experience that I have is with camp, right? So camp, and I know some of you here have been involved in camps. Who has been involved in camp before? Orthodox camps, anybody? Yeah, so a few of you, wonderful. So, you know, camp is such a magical place, very powerful place. You know, you get your kids out into the woods, right? You take their cell phones away, you brainwash them for a week. It's awesome, right? Or for more, right? And they're really excited. You know, they're doing matins in the morning, they're doing vespers at night, and they're doing liturgy, and they're reading, and they're really excited, right? And, you know, after the week's done, the 2 weeks or whatever it is, they are now Orthodox Christians. And they actually are the closest to it. But what happens is they go back home. And what happens at home? Nobody wants to pray with them, right? So many kids, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. That so many kids that have such phenomenal experiences at camp, they forge really amazing relationships, not only with their priests, with their counselors, but with other children. And they do come back year after year. When they go home, so many kids have told me the same story. We give them their little, you know, handouts, you know, matins in English, vespers in English, divine liturgy, and they know them off by heart. They know the Psalms and everything, right? They go home and they're so excited, and they go to their parents and say, Mom and Dad, can we read Matins in the morning together? And their parents don't care. Parents don't want to do it. We're too busy, we've got other things to do, it's not for me, right? And so the parents kill the spirituality of the children. It's insane. It's something that we don't really think about, but in my experience, having done all this youth work for the last 20 years, one of the biggest problems in youth ministry and generally speaking is the parents, right? It is the lack of adult religious education, the lack of engagement by the parents. That we have all these programs for the younger generation, and we're working so hard, but we're not working smart, and we put all this effort and it doesn't bear fruit because the parents don't water at home and they don't train up the youth. And so this is why very, very quickly, at least in my personal ministry, I switched over and laid a heavy, heavy emphasis on adult religious education. I did this almost immediately in my first parish. So my first parish was St. Demetrius, Greek Orthodox Church in Winnipeg, as I said, and that was back in 2008 when I took over there. I was there for 6 years. And, you know, almost immediately I thought to myself, because I had already been in youth ministry even before I was a priest for a long time, I thought, you know what, we're going to try something new, and we're actually going to try to measure it. So we're going to take metrics, which nobody does in parishes, right? So I have metrics. I have metrics for you, right? At least for the 6 years that I was there. I've since come back to Toronto, but I've also seen the same results, and I'll get to those as well. So, but I have metrics. So everybody talks about ideas, but nobody actually has a clicker and says how many people actually show up at church, what's the demographic, how many people in the youth group, how many people in the Sunday school, and things like that. So I did that. So adult religious education is where it's at. You know, it's important to realize that our faith, we may not like this, but our faith is a top-down faith. You know, we say we have a hierarchy. It's not just for the priests and the bishops, right? In the family, there's a hierarchy, right? It's a top-down faith, which basically means is that the parents are at the top and the children are at the bottom, right? And so you can't expect the children to be preaching to the parents. Sometimes it happens, and it's beautiful when it does. But really, it is the parents who are on the top who have the responsibility, and of course the grandparents beyond them, to teach the faith and to allow it to trickle down to the younger generations. This is how the church has always functioned. This is why we never had Sunday schools in the Orthodox Church. The Sunday school model is a Protestant model, right? And so we never had anything like that for almost 2,000 years, right? But suddenly now we think we've found the solution, right? So the church always assumed that parents were going to be engaged, that they were going to be somewhat knowledgeable in their faith, even in areas where there was high illiteracy. People actually knew more than we know now, which is kind of crazy, right? You hear St. John Chrysostom talking about how people in the marketplace would be, debating, homoousios, right? And it's like, well, weren't they mostly illiterate? Yeah, but they were engaged, right? And they went to church. And now we have like the internet and smartphones and all these things, and we don't even know what homoousios is, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of where we are today. More information and yet less knowledge, less wisdom. And so, the faith is definitely top down. And so my theory was, and I stand behind it because I don't think it's a theory anymore, that if you emphasize and if you focus on the parents, everything else will take care of itself. And so here is the National Youth Director who didn't neglect the youth in his parish, but definitely didn't put all the resources there. And my board had a problem with it. My board's like, shouldn't you be spending more time with the youth? Like we had youth programs, like we had dance groups and youth group and things like that, and I spent time with all of them. But I spent so much emphasis on adult religious education, and people said, you're really neglecting the youth, Father. I said, I'm not, trust me, you'll see what happens. And so, it's, thinking about the parents is, again, going back to the title of my talk, which is, preaching to the older brother, right? So we all remember, we should, the parable of the prodigal son, right? And of course, everybody focuses on the prodigal son, right? Because a lot of times we identify with the prodigal son at some point in our lives, and yet the majority of cradle Orthodox, I tend to identify, and I identify myself, with the older brother. Because what was the mistake of the older brother? The prodigal actually repented, right? Came back to the father. Doesn't matter what he did. The father embraced him, took him in, and they went in and had festivities, right? Because he was dead and now he was alive. He was lost and now he is found. And yet the older brother, who was assumedly the loyal one, the faithful one, the one who never disobeyed the father, the one who never left, was always there. He was always in the group, in the clique, right? And he came and he saw, the brother who had left, who had become an outsider, the xeno, as we say in Greek, which is a horrible word, the other, the person who is not one of us. And he had come back, and they had rolled out the red carpet for him. And so the older brother was jealous. And the older brother refused to go in to the banquet. And it's kind of a scary parable, because at the very end, it doesn't tell you what happens. It doesn't reveal to you, that, what happened. We know the father comes out and he pleads with him, and that's where it leaves it. It doesn't tell you what happened. And I find a lot of times, at least in my sermons on Sundays, I find that these are the people that I'm speaking to. Of course, I have a mixture in my parish. I have converts, I have young people, I have old people, but I find that the majority of the time, I feel like I'm speaking to the older brother. I feel like I'm speaking to people who are there with their bodies and to a certain degree with their minds, but I feel that their hearts are not there. And I see this is not me judging my congregation, because I place myself sometimes in the same group. But I feel that the way we act towards others, non-Orthodox, new Orthodox coming in, is not very Christian a lot of times. And I'm sure you see it here in the States as well. It's just much more poignant in Canada, because we have just like a slightly younger, immigrant population, right? And so you don't have this kind of like beautiful welcoming of the other into the church. And we see this with the older brother. And so how do we fix this? And so, I think you can all attest to this even in the States, but we can definitely see it in Canada, is that in parishes where you try to look at, tracking who's the most involved, right? Who are the biggest givers? Who are the biggest volunteers? Who are the ones who are more zealous? Usually it's the converts, right? Not always, but generally speaking, right? And usually the cradles are not like doing nothing, don't get me wrong, they're helping out as well, but they're much less zealous for the faith, because they've kind of grown up in it and they kind of take it for granted, right? And so this is kind of like the mix that we have within our parishes. And so, it's a big problem, because when I have catechumens in my church, and I have quite a few right now, and they do about a year with me in my parish before they get baptized, who are the ambassadors of the faith? They think it's me, but it shouldn't be me. It should be the whole community. It should be the whole living body of Christ. And it's hard, and there's a big problem when you try to shield your catechumens from the rest of your congregation. It's sad, but it's true. It's like, I caught myself a couple of years ago. This is really sad, but I'm going to say it anyways. John, well, I don't know. Don't edit it out. I don't edit anything anyways, right? A few years ago, I remember I had a catechumen come to me, and they were interested, and they didn't come from any religious background. Their family was predominantly like kind of agnostic / atheist, right? And they were saying, what's the kind of the first service that I should come to kind of dip my toe into the Orthodox waters? And I was thinking, I'm like, not Sunday. Don't come on Sunday, because you'll probably, I don't think she was like, why? And I said, well, they're not going to be that nice to you. I said, come to, Saturday Vespers. It's all in English, and there's like 3 people there, right? Which is true. I've been doing Saturday Vespers for 11 years, and it's wonderful, but it's really just me, the female chanter that I have, and maybe 3 or 4 converts. So, and some catechumens. But, it's still a wonderful experience, because it's a good way to ease into like the overwhelming liturgical life of the Orthodox Church. But the fact that I had to think about that, I stopped afterwards and I reflected, and I said, wow, like, that's really bad. That I have to second guess inviting people to Sunday liturgy. And I have to tell them, you know what, maybe we go to like something a little smaller, and then I can kind of brace you for what's going to happen on Sunday. And so as a priest, that really kind of affected me. And I was thinking about that. I said, we really, really need to work on the older brother, because the older brother is the one who should be embracing the prodigal, who should be embracing the outsider, who should be embracing everybody and showing them how to do it. Just like parents, as I started talking about parents, should be leading their children, so the so-called cradle Orthodox should be leading are newly formed Orthodox Christians in the faith, and we're not doing that. Some of us are, but generally speaking, and I think it's the same case in the States as well, generally we're not doing a great job of it. Usually it's converts helping other converts, and that creates kind of like a separate class within the church, which is not good at all. We need a real mentorship, a real love for God's creation and for all our brothers and sisters. So what's the solution? Right? That's what we're here to talk about, right? To have tools to be able to kind of go back and try to implement things and learn from one another. And so, about 11 years ago, well, 10 years ago, about 1 year into my first parish, I started this program called Re-Catechism. And Re-Catechism is exactly what the word says, is to re-catechize those people who should already know, as Frederica said last night, it started as just a discussion group. And actually, to the greater part, it still is now 11 years later. It's a discussion group. It's kind of like an open forum where we sit down, and yes, there are themes that we choose. It's like a guided discussion, but it is an open forum where people are kind of not afraid to explore their faith in a way that they won't feel that they're going to be judged, or that the priest is going to talk down to them, or make them feel like inadequate, or that they shouldn't be asking certain questions, right? So it's designed specifically for adults. It's not designed for youth. It's not even really designed that much for kind of teens and older youth, but it's specifically for adults, especially parents. It's not a class, it's a guided discussion, as I said. And people are free to even question the faith, and even to play devil's advocate. And we have also non-Orthodox who come to these. We have atheists who show up, we have Roman Catholics, we have Buddhists, we have other people. Not a lot, but there's a mix of people that come. It's not just the so-called Cradle Orthodox, but it's mostly Cradle Orthodox, right? And the goal is to adopt, in each local community, a style that suits them. And so when we started this program in Winnipeg, it was highly successful. We had, a core group of about 20 to 30 people, which for Winnipeg was a lot, because the community it was only one Greek Orthodox parish in the whole city. But it was consistent. It was consistent. It started off as every other Wednesday. And it was just like 2 hours just sitting together, having coffee and discussing. We would have a theme every kind of, I don't want to say semester because that sounds like school, right? But the spring session, the fall session would have a different theme. And we were discussing. And so it was successful. And then slowly we started rolling it out in different parishes across Canada. It's not everywhere, even to this day. But when we started doing it and piloting it at different parishes, the first thing that the priest would ask me, because usually it was the priests who were doing it, can you give me a curriculum? What's the structure? And I didn't have a curriculum for them. And they said, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you do? And I said, well, I can tell you what I do, but it might not help you. And they didn't understand that. I said, well, just because I'm talking about, for example, I don't know, Monasticism 101, in this session in my local parish that might be really, really interested in this topic. Your people in Vancouver, for example, might not be interested in that. And so it's really much more complex than just having a cookie cutter curriculum that we can print out little pamphlets and pass it around at a clergy lady conference or a priest syndesmos or something and say, here, everybody just do this. This is what a lot of priests wanted, and this is actually what my bishop wanted. He wanted like this kind of like, we like structures, right? We like, one size fits all solutions. I said, Re-Catechism is not that. It has to be the local priest, sometimes in conjunction with local catechist, if it's not just the priest teaching, reading their parish. What is the level of education? What generation are they? If they're mostly immigrants, are they mostly converts? Are they a mix? What is their socioeconomic level? Things like that. What are their interests? What do they know? And you build off of that. So I told them I can give you examples of different topics, but they're very diverse and they change. And you have to have different approaches. Some places prefer a lecture, some places prefer a discussion, some places prefer a PowerPoint, some places like webinars and things like that. You really have to be diverse about it. So this is what was kind of like a hard pill to swallow amongst many of the priests who kind of just wanted something to be able to do, just to be told, here, just follow this, because it requires much more engagement. And so that was a difficult thing, and this is also why Re-Catechism as a kind of a program and as also as a, I don't want to call it a movement per se, although we call that on the podcast. Thanks, John, for that one. But why it makes it so hard, because you really have to be engaged in your parish. It's really hard for somebody from the outside to come in and tell you how to do Re-Catechism, right? You really have to know your people. So no two Re-Catechism programs are identical. You know, we have, and so I've been collecting kind of like themes and topics from different, brother priests who have been doing it, and they've all been so beautiful and diverse. And we have a website now, you know, like we have a Re-Catechism.com where we kind of put up different material and things like that, and we have a Facebook group, and we interact with one another. But it's interesting to see where communities tend to gravitate towards. It's really, really fascinating. And it gives you an idea of where we are, you know, demographically. So, you know, the only thing that I can impart to all of you and also to other brother priests who, or catechists who are interested in kind of focusing on adult religious education is that Re-Catechism has some main themes, some kind of core principles that we try to espouse, and then we run with it after that. And so one is content should be a mixture of contemporary themes and traditional Orthodox thought. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that, for example, I had a priest recently ask me, well, and he's down the street from me, and I have Re-Catechism every Wednesday, and there are 50 people there. And he has a Re-Catechism. He's called a Re-Catechism, but right. And he's struggling to have 3 or 4 or 5 people. And I asked him, okay, well, what is your content, right? He says, well, you know, we're studying like certain fathers of the church, and last session we read through the book of Revelation. I said, okay, that might be a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I go, who is your audience, right? You know, if you only have 5 or 6 people. I go, who actually requested this? Did you actually poll your people? Do you ask them what they're interested in and what they want to know about? And they said, well, the people who asked about learning about Revelation, or the people who asked about learning about these specific fathers, they're the only ones who show up. I said, well, there's your red flag right there. That's right. You know, you have to mix it up a bit. It can't just be, you know, this kind of classic Orthodox approach that we've had, you know, a lecture about, you know, St. John Chrysostom, a lecture about the gospel, things like that. You can do that, but you have to mix it up a bit, right? So for example, you know, there's been some sessions where I've done like a crash course in the last 2,000 years of history, but not like in the kind of this dry sense, okay, these are the ecumenical councils, this is whatever, but kind of like an overview of like, how do we get here in North America? Right? And with using videos and things like that. But then like the next session was like the Orthodox family, dealing with issues of dating, abortion, miscarriage, drug addiction, things like that. That was completely different, out of left field. And that was like the next semester. And different people came to that, but also some of the same. And you build, you know, the listenership or the people who are attending, right? And then after that, we did Monasticism 101 because people wanted to know about monasticism, like what is this kind of thing going on and where did it come from and things like that, you know? And, you know, the year after that we did like, I have one coming, we read through the Orthodox Way, Bishop Callis' Ware's book, and but we did it kind of like a book club. And we were reading like half a chapter and exploring the themes in that, which was a completely different format. And this is all in my parish. This is not in different parishes, right? And so it's diverse and it's different. Like, you know, what we're doing now, what we're planning to do in September is we just finished, practical orthodoxy. So we did a bunch of sessions on what are the practical things we need to know when death happens, marriage, baptism, right? How to bake a prosforo. I bake a mean prosforo, just so you guys know, right? So I actually like baked, you know, I actually needed one in front of them. Like we had 50 people and they were watching me breaking a sweat, you know, doing the thing and explaining the stamp and all this kind of stuff. And we baked one and you know, we talked about like how to make koliva and why do we do this and what happens when somebody dies and what are the practical things we need to know. Like what is a savana? What is a burial shroud? Why do you need one? Why do you bury the person facing this way? Like this practical stuff that nobody ever talks about, but we assume that everyone knows and nobody knows, right? It's on my website, but nobody goes to the website when somebody dies, right? So we did that. And then this semester, we're changing it up again. And I'm stealing, because I like to do that, borrowing from, you know, has anyone read that very famous book, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, right? Very, very like popular book, right? And they made a movie of it, it's on Netflix, things like that, right? So I stole that title, although I'm not reading through the book, but we're looking at the case for Christ from a secular point of view. Why? Because a lot of Orthodox Christians will say, well, Father, why are you focusing on these types of arguments? You know, we as Orthodox Christians, we don't need to prove to anybody that Jesus Christ resurrected. We know that he resurrected, right? I'm like, yeah, but nobody else does, right? And you're living in North America where people think like this. And if you as an Orthodox Christian can't make an argument or defend your faith without appealing to Scripture, because the other person does not recognize Scripture as an authority, right? Then you're going to have a problem. So you need to be able to discuss on other people's level. So this session that's coming up, it's not so much, reinforcing our own faith, but rather, how do we dialogue? How do we dialogue with the other, right? On their level, not on our own level. And so we'll see how that goes. It might go well, it might go really badly. We'll see, right? So you got to have, number one, content should be a mixture of contemporary themes and traditional Orthodox thought. There should be a focus on practical theology while still providing theoretical knowledge. So again, how do we live an Orthodox lifestyle? How do you build a prayer corner, right? And then a little bit about the saints that are in that prayer corner, right? So you have to have both, right? I feel that that's lacking in a lot of kind of Bible studies or discussion groups. A refocus, number 3, on adult religious education as well as youth education. So really drive home the importance of the parents and their role in the household. Like, you need to know this stuff because your kids are going to ask you. So if you can't answer, there's going to be a problem. The faith stops there, right? Number 4, to train parents to take responsibility for their children's spiritual upbringing. And we know this, right? It's like, the phenomenon of drop off my kid at Sunday school, go to Starbucks, right? Don't take my kid to church for the first 4 years of their lives because they're squeamish and they're running around and I don't want to distract everybody. I'll wait until they're 4 or 5, then I'll put them in Sunday school and they'll get their religion. I know this, we all know this as content creators. We've lived this and it drives us insane, but it still happens, right? It still happens in quite a few places across the country, and especially up in Canada all the time. So we have to train parents to take responsibility. They have to be the first catechists, they have to be the first priests in the home. Number 5, to endeavor to remedy the problem of religious education from the top down, as I said, rather from the bottom up. Number 6, to ensure that parents know more about orthodoxy than their children do. What a concept, And number 7, to ensure that parents are the source of religious education in their home. That's an important one, right? The parents need to be the source, not the internet, not your friends, and I'm not going to say not the priest, but ironically enough, the priest needs to be secondary. The parent needs to be the authority figure in the home, right? If the children do not see their parents as a guide in the faith, there's going to be a problem. Sure, there's nothing wrong with respecting the priest, but the priest only sees them like 20 minutes a week, if he's lucky. And as far as actually sitting down and talking with them, sometimes never, right? So who's with them all the time? It's the parents, the grandparents, and unfortunately the TV, right? So it's really important to remind the parents that they need to be the first, maybe not the only source, but the most important and primary source of theology in the home, which places a lot of pressure on them, but it also drives home how important it is for them to live their faith and to know their faith, right? So that you're not giving up your responsibility to somebody else. You're not shirking your responsibility to the Sunday school teacher who probably doesn't know much more. That's the reality. And you're not assuming that they're going to learn at school or anywhere else, right? Because the kids, they're going to learn from somewhere. And what they're going to do is they're usually going to Google it as soon as they get old enough, and they're going to learn a bunch of weird stuff, right? Because there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and there's a lot of Orthodox websites that say they're Orthodox, and we know they're not, right? So you really have to curate, and you have to know exactly what you're teaching your children. So these are kind of like the principles that we try to emphasize. So whatever you're going to do in your parish, try to keep this emphasis, right, on keeping it fresh, keeping it practical and theoretical, and having a strong emphasis on the parents being the main teachers of the faith to the children, right? Everybody can be a theologian. People say, oh, no, they can't. Yeah, they can. Every one of us can be a theologian. Just pray first. Everything else will come, So, of course, I had mentioned that we created a website. That's really good, to have content on there, and Facebook group, and we use WhatsApp, and we communicate with each other and different events and things like that. And also, a byproduct of this has been clergy collaboration, right? So the more clergy who have been involved in this, and also catechists, has been really good, because when we have cross-pollination and we have other ideas and we bounce things off each other, and things just keep getting better. So I will give you some of my results, because I said I did take metrics. So as I said, those first 6 years when I was in Winnipeg, it was kind of like my test parish. I hate to say it like that, but it was my first love, because every parish will say that, that your first parish is your first love. So when you leave there, it's like breaking up with your first love. It's heartbreaking. And it was a wonderful, wonderful community. But it was also a testing ground for a lot of these, this kind of like Re-Catechism movement, I guess you could say, or thought process. So I was there from July 2008 to July 2014. This is what I discovered and what we could measure. So number one, there was a visible increase. So after ranging over the 6 years and emphasizing the adult religious education, both through the actual sessions and also through the sermons as well. So the iSermon also focuses on the adults, if you notice. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But if you notice in my parish, there is no youth sermon. There's no youth sermon. I'm not knocking priests who do youth sermons, okay? But I don't do them on purpose. I know it's a big thing now, and I know a lot of people think it's awesome, and I'm not saying it's not, because I know some priests who do phenomenal youth sermons, but I don't personally do them. Why? Because for two reasons. One is I'm against partisaning the parish and the family, right? I don't like putting children in reserved pews for the youth or for the Sunday school, separating them from organically from their families and from the worship experience. When people come to church, they should come to church as a family, they should sit as a family, and children should look at their parents, how they pray, how they do their cross, all these things. Elisa talks about this a lot, right? And how do you model that behavior? You can't do that if you shovel your kids in the front pews there so that we can show to people that we have youth. So the optics are great, but the results are dismal. And the second thing is that youth sermons, crafting a specific sermon for a younger generation and taking time out of the liturgy to do that, it reinforces, although the children feel special and the priest speaks to them and it's great and they have a rapport with the priest, which can also be built in other ways, it reinforces that kind of shirking of the responsibility from the parents. The parents say, well, the priest gave him a youth sermon. I don't need to do anything when I go home. So in my parish, what I do is I say, no, in my parish, there's one sermon for the adults. And if your children have questions, they can ask their parents when they go home, right? I know that sounds very patriarchal, right? And very hierarchical. But this really promotes an environment in the home of parents engaging with their children and their children engaging with their parents. So I always tell my parents, it's like, when you go home for lunch after Sunday, right, which is wonderful because usually families stay together and they go home and they have Sunday lunch together, right? The children should ask their parents, what was Father Ted trying to say? Because some of them, they pick it up, but some of them, they're too young to understand, right? Or the parents should ask engaging questions. What did the priest say today? What do you think he said? And the parents should unpack it for the children. That's their job. It's not my job, right? It's the same thing in the Sunday school. I direct my Sunday school teachers because we do Sunday school after church. We don't do it during liturgy. That will definitely kill the liturgical spirituality of your children, right? But because we do it after, we have a limited time. We only have about 40 minutes of Sunday school. It's short. It's from the time they take communion, they leave, they only miss the dismissal, they go upstairs to the Sunday school classes, and then by the time coffee hour is done, they get picked up. So it's about 40 minutes. So they don't have a lot of time. So I always tell my Sunday school teachers, it's like, the best thing you can do if you don't have time to do anything else is to ask the children what they heard in church and unpack the sermon for them. It's really important. Right? Because then the kids next week when they come, they'll try to listen, even though they don't fully understand the sermon, and it becomes almost like it becomes like a fun game for them because they're trying to figure out what the priest is trying to say, and they don't fully understand. But then they'll run to their teacher or run to their parents and ask, and that creates engagement. Right? If you just water everything down and you dumb it down for them, then you're not really elevating them. You're just lowering the faith. Right? I'm not against content for children. It's just, in the liturgy, it's to bring everybody up, right? So I don't have youth sermons either. So going back to the metrics, sorry, I digressed a bit there. Number one is there was a visible increase in adult and youth attendance at the church. So in 2008, the average Sunday attendance in that particular parish was about 200, which for Greeks is not that much. I know for other parishes a lot. For Greeks, that's dismal, right? Because most Greek parishes are massive, right? By 2014, the average Sunday attendance was 385. Right, over 6 years. So there was a 200% increase. Approximately 100 of those people were under the age of 45. So that was really good. Number two, there was a visible increase in youth participation in the sacraments. So like in 2008, the average number of parishioners participating in Sunday Holy Communion was only about 45 out of the 200. right? By 2014, the average number of parishioners participating in Holy Communion was about 195 on the average every Sunday communing, right? So there was greater engagement and everything that goes along with that, right? It's fasting and preparation and confession, right? Number 3, there was a visible increase in participation in the local youth association, the Goya, altar servers in Sunday school and church choir. So in 2008, the local youth association numbered approximately 8 members, ranging from ages 14 to 16. By 2014, the local youth association numbered 25 members, ranging from 11 to 20. So the range got bigger, right? And the numbers got bigger, right? And I wasn't talking to the kids, I was talking to the parents. So this is all focusing on the parents, not focusing on the children. In 2008, the average number of enrolled altar servers was 5 on the average every Sunday, with an average of 5 enrolled and an average of 2 to 3 present every Sunday, right? By 2014, the total number enrolled of altar servers was 25, and the average was 18 present every Sunday. We didn't have enough robes for them, which was a wonderful thing. Again, not telling them to come. I never said to the young boys, hey, come to the altar. I didn't have to say it once. Their parents started pushing them to go on their own. It just kind of happened automatically. It was kind of strange. Number 4, there was a reported increase in theological discussion at home around the dinner table. Now, this is difficult to quantify, right? Like, you can't sit there with a number and go to people's homes and say, what did you talk about this Sunday? What did you talk about this Sunday? But this is more of an anecdotal kind of evidence, because a lot of parents would tell this to me. They would say, Father, now we're talking about this at home. We're having discussions. We're having debates. And a lot of parents would report this. So that was a very positive thing. There was, number 5, there was a visible increase in young adults, ages 16 to 30, attending a church. So, as previously mentioned, there was, a 200% increase from 2008 to 2014, and 100 of those people were under 45. Approximately 32 of them were under the age, were between the age of 16 and 30. So, that age group where you usually lose them, 16, that's when they take off, right? They graduate Sunday school, and now they know everything, but they don't know how to be in church because they've never been in church, right? And or they go off to university and you don't see them. So we saw a significant increase in that age group, which is crazy, because even the best of parishes, you don't see that demographic. They're usually off in university, doing what they're doing, being challenged, and they're just not going to church. There, we seem to have a good core. About 35 of them for that community was a lot of those young teens and young adults who were in university and they were going to church every Sunday, right? And they started transitioning into Re-Catechism. So from their youth groups, they started attending the adult sessions, which became a bridge, right? And there was number 7, the last one is there was a significant increase in volunteerism across all age groups, right? So this was just seen across all parish life. So there was a revitalization of the people who wanted to help with the youth group, people who wanted to help with the Sunday school, people who wanted to help with the summer camp program that we had there as well. We had a Camp Metamorphosis there as well. Children who were involved in the dance programs, right? All those kind of went up on their own. I wasn't knocking on any doors. I wasn't emailing anybody. I wasn't asking, can you please bring your kids? I wasn't pulling teeth to get them there. It was just the parents the parents really want to go, bottom line, and so their kids really want to go. The parents were excited about going to church. They were excited about going to Re-Catechism, and that kind of really impressed their children. It was the culture that was being created in the home, and the kids just came along for the ride. And usually it's the other way around, right? The kids get impressed by a priest, they get impressed by a youth worker, they get impressed by their dance teacher, they get impressed by camp, but they go home and it fizzles out because the parents are not impressed, they're not energized, right? So, conclusion, while there are many approaches to ministry, and of course, we have a lot of them, and I'm not saying that Re-Catechism is the most, the best or the most foolproof. Parishes are very complex, we know this, and it's a jungle. It's a jungle of human need and pain and suffering and joy and a bunch of things that are happening in the parish, and priests and lay assistants and board members and catechists, they're all just navigating this jungle, and it's really, really hard. And a lot of times, there's a lot of presentations that we go to, there's a lot of books we read, and all of them are trying to sometimes they focus on just one of those problems, and that's not a bad thing per se, but it's not a solution. And I have found that I used to kind of micromanage those problems as well myself, especially when I was a deacon. I first started helping out, and even before that as a lay assistant. I kind of thought that if we could just kind of have good youth programs, if I could have a good, seniors group, visitation group, if I could micromanage all these problems, the parish would get healthier. And not only was it unmanageable, but it didn't really work. It didn't really work. As I mentioned before, in Canada, we had great youth programs for 40 years. It didn't make kids go to church when they got older, right? But I have found that for some reason this does work, that just kind of focusing on the family as a whole, like a holistic approach to education, that, if you engage at the top, then it seems to kind of bring the whole family together. It gels, it comes together as a family. And if the families are healthy in the home, the church family is going to be healthy. And so this is why there's I've placed such a strong emphasis on Re-Catechism and not on specific, groups within the church. In closing, I'm just going to leave you, because I want to leave some time for, we have time. What time is it? John, we're okay?
Yep.
What time are we finishing? 45? So we'll have some time for questions. That's good. Okay. So I'm gonna leave you. I got through faster than I thought, which is good. So I was kind of racing because I was scared, because I was seeing Angela. She was trying to finish, and Nicole was trying to finish, and I didn't want to be like that. So so I try to get through my content quickly. I'm gonna leave you with a little excerpt from a letter that we give our parents when they sign their kids up for Sunday school every year. It's the same letter, it doesn't change. I changed it a little bit, but the core of it stays the same. And so, but this kind of captures kind of the essence of this kind of Re-Catechism, emphasis that I've been doing over the last 11 years. So we say to them, "We are very honored to have your child attending our Sunday school. Our goal is simple: to help strengthen your child's spiritual understanding and faith. This is why you, their parents, are so important. You are really your child's first spiritual teacher. No matter how good our teachers may be, your child will always look to you as their example of Christian morality, faith, and love. Because your child will learn from you most of what they will come to know about orthodoxy and God, it is important, if you do want your child to have a strong spiritual foundation, to reinforce the teachings of the faith at home. We recognize that you are doing a wonderful job as a parent, and we are interested in working with you to give you the tools you need to ensure that your child has the best spiritual development possible. Please work with us. Be your child's first teacher at home. Allow yourself to become their first priest. Teach them the Word of God through your own actions, and let them see that your faith is important to you. This will make it important to them. In order to properly catechize them, we must first re-catechize ourselves." Thank you. Questions or? Yeah? No? Oh. Frederica.
Hello up there.
Sorry.
That's okay. Here we go. All right. I just wanted to give a suggestion, something that my daughter-in-law, as far as I know, invented, which is when the sermon would start, to her little children, she would hand out paper and crayons and say, illustrate what the preacher is saying. Who is in fact their father. And what your dad is saying now is he gives the sermon, draw a picture of it. And that was a way to engage them in the sermon, keep them listening, keep their ears open.
That's brilliant.
Just
Thank
a
you.
Suggestion.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Your Grace. Back up again. Just twist the little one, the actual microphone. There we go.
Thank you, Father Theodore, for this wonderful lecture. I just want to ask you, speaking earlier about those coming new into the church and how you were hesitant to bring them into Sunday liturgy and prefer to bring them first into Vespers because how the cradle Orthodox would react to them. So there is a movement now in some of our Coptic Orthodox dioceses in North America to try to overcome this problem by establishing parallel parishes. So American Coptic Orthodox churches that are directed towards converts. And some dioceses are allowing these parishes to go in parallel, maybe close by to the traditional parishes. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that idea? Thank you.
I know exactly, Your Grace, thank you for that. I know exactly what you're talking about because in Toronto we have a very strong Coptic community, and I'm very close with many of the priests there. So this is happening right now. So in northern Toronto, there is St. Mark's Cathedral, which is stunning. They just rebuilt it. There's the old one. My wife actually grew up like just one block behind the old museum. I think that was the first Coptic Orthodox church in Canada. And now they built, the bigger version. And then just a few blocks north, they have St. Maurice and Varenna, which is one of those. Like, it is completely geared English-speaking. Father Pishoy Salama is there, who's a wonderful priest, and it's completely geared towards youth. I'm on the fence with this, my personal, and this is not to criticize. This is just, you asked me my honest opinion. So I'm on the fence. Why? On the surface, it looks good, and they're doing wonderful work because they're catering to a demographic that needs to be catered to. The problem with it is that it's the same problem that I have, for example, with the Roman Catholic Church doing multiple masses in the same day in the same parish for different demographics within their community. The body of Christ is one, and one of the key teachings of the faith is love, and to understand that we are there in church not for ourselves or what I can extract from the church, but for my fellow Christians, right? So I always tell people, people say, hey, Father, why can't we do an English liturgy at 12 p.m. and the Greek one a little earlier for the old people? It's horrible. And I always say, listen, I go, if you as a Christian cannot bear to sit through half the liturgy in Greek for the sake of your brothers and sisters, and they can't bear to sit through the liturgy, half the liturgy, for example, in Greek for you, then what kind of Christians are we, right? So part of keeping the body of Christ together is to learn how to wrestle with these different needs in the community. So I don't know, I guess time will show how that's going to work out for the Coptic Church, but partisaning the communities like that, it can bring a lot of people in, and there can be a lot of ministry that happens, but the problem is that now you're going to have, for example, the St. Mark's community and the St. Maurice community, they're not going to talk to each other. They won't have anything in common. And there won't be a kinship of Coptic Orthodox Christians being together. I hope they do. I hope they're able to bridge that. But that's why I'm on the fence with that. That's my honest, I think might be better solutions. Yeah. Yes.
So I have sort of a similar question. I work with the Greek Orthodox metropolis of San Francisco in missions and evangelism. And I work with a lot of parishes, and the priests will tell me I'm preaching to two communities. It's divided, just as you described. Or I work with lay leaders who will tell me, we really want to do a welcome ministry, or we want to have adult education, but our priest has kind of asked us to stand down in order not to upset the rest of the community. And so we kind of have to keep it on the down low right now and not pursue these things that we want to do for the sake of evangelism. So I think it sounds like adult education, that emphasis really did cause a lot of healing, or was brought healing to your community. But I'm wondering if you have any other suggestions to a priest or to a lay leader who's saying, look, we're really two communities, we're divided, and we're afraid to cater to the person who's learning about Orthodoxy, and we're afraid to cater to the person who's cradle because they're not seeing themselves as one.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a big problem, and as I said, it's even more so in Canada than it is in the States, although I'm sure you're seeing it, as you mentioned. Even emphasizing adult religious education is not going to fix all your problems. That's the reality. And it's a long, arduous process. It's, re-educating a whole generation is not something that happens overnight. It doesn't even happen over 6 years. Like, I was lucky that it happened to click really well in Winnipeg. Then I came to Toronto, and now I'm at St. Constantine and Helen in Greek Orthodox in Toronto, which has also been going well, but not at the same pace. And I've been there for almost 5 years now, and it's much slower. It's frustrating. It's much slower. It's a snail pace because the demographics are different. There's more, and I do the most English in the city. I do like 75% English on my Sunday liturgy, which is unheard of in Toronto for Greeks in Toronto, right? It's very ethnic, right? So, and it's still a snail pace. But, I always say sometimes the problems are so many that you can't fix them all. So you just pick one thing and you work really hard at it, right? So I don't even have a youth group yet in my parish, and I've been there 5 years, which is shameful considering I was former national youth director, right? I don't, because the demographics didn't lend to it, because I had a lot of young kids, like, you know how parishes go up and down, right? So when I went there, a lot of the youth had grown up and they went off to university, and then we had a ton of little babies. So now they're getting to the age where you can actually do something with them. So I don't have a youth group in there. I don't have a visitation group. I don't have a lot of stuff that I had in Winnipeg, but I have Re-Catechism. And it's the one thing that I do, and it's actually flourishing more than it was in Winnipeg. Because, as I said, I used to do it like twice a month there, not wanting to, you know, inconvenience people's lives. And here, I'm doing it every Wednesday, and there's like 50, 60 people coming. And they're all people who don't even go to the church. They're people from like other parishes or non-practicing Orthodox who won't go to church on Sunday, but they come to the Re-Catechism, which is bizarre, right? And so I'm just sticking to it. Like, you know, listen, if they're there and we're having meaningful discussions, then that I have to have faith that down the road will permeate their lives. Right? So what I'm seeing now is that this is something I kind of joke about, is that we have this group now, and it's a bunch of like people who would never talk to each other, who would never see each other, different walks of life, not from the same parish. Like, okay, 2/3 are from the same parish, but like 1/3 is not. But for some reason now, because they come to Re-Catechism, they've gelled as a group. So now they start going out. It's bizarre. They go out to karaoke, and they make reservations under Father Ted. I'm like, guys, slow down. Where are you guys going, and what are you using my name for? So they kind of have this friendship that they've grown, but they'll be there from like 7:30 at night until 9:30 at night. They won't leave because they have questions, which is a good problem. They'll be in the parking lot talking theology. And then they'll go to a coffee shop. I'm going to go home. I'm tired. I got kids, right? And they go to the coffee shop and they still talk about the stuff that they were. So that's a really good thing. So is that fixing everything? No. I have to preach 2 sermons every Sunday in 2 languages. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. 7 minutes each, because you can't go too long because people will freak out, right? You know how exhausting it is to write a sermon in English and then translate it on the fly into Greek in your head, right? And also change things so that the idioms and the examples are relevant to the Greek culture as opposed to the English culture. It's exhausting. And that's what most of us are doing, at least still in Canada. And you have to do that because we're straddling 2 generations. But they're both our people. And so it's not you can't make it a competition or a war. It's more like, okay, you got your aunt who speaks one language, you got your brother who speaks, and we're all part of the same family. So we got to be patient. And I know it's hard. You have to have the priest on your side. Like if the priest doesn't set the tone, you'll have a bigger problem. I know that. But just do what you're doing, like even if it's on the down low, because those roots will grow if you do your job right. Yeah. But there's no easy solution. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Father. This was wonderful. So I know you said that that you're not using a curriculum. I guess my question is, does anybody ever graduate from this Re-Catechism? And I guess more of the question is this something for beginners that one day you won't be a beginner and there's another platform for adult education in the parish? Or is this the platform for adult education?
So, no, there isn't a time where someone graduates because we're learning for our whole lives, right? So, because I try to keep away from this idea of school, yeah. Right? So, ideas of graduating and levels and things like that, right? So, it's a mature adult conversation, right? And like all, well, not all, but like many adult conversations go, there's a variety of them, right? So, kind of like the approach that I take in my sessions is kind of the Socratic Method, right? So it's, I'll introduce a theme or a topic, or maybe we'll watch a video, like we'll watch a Be the Bee video or something, or something else, right? That helps lend to kind of unpacking a certain theme, right? And then before I even talk, we go around. And so I want to hear from everybody. So it's like, what did you think about this? What struck you? What are your first impressions? And that's how we just roll with that, right? And so we'll go through, and when you have 50 people, well, there's no lack of opinions and different insights. And so we go around and I'll interject when I need to, or when somebody has a direct question for me, or we need guidance, or kind of steer it back in the kind of a healthy direction, because sometimes people debate and things like that. But I find that because they're adult, it's a seminar style. So people learn better by talking, right? But it's laid back. It's not me at a podium like now, unfortunately. We're all sitting around coffee tables together, right? And it's very relaxed. And so the conversations sometimes are profound, sometimes they're not, but usually people get something out of it. Some people have different understandings, but that's also part of why the group works really well, and these groups work really well because it's a family. And just like in any group of friends, not everybody's at the same intellectual level, and not everybody's the same, education. But everybody kind of discusses, and some people learn and they get brought up, and other people teach, and So yeah, no, there's no levels, or you don't finish. You just keep going, and I think that's a good thing, because people say, they don't want to stop for the summer. It's like, I got to stop for the summer because I'm exhausted, right? But they're like, well, can we go through the summer? What are we going to do on Wednesdays? I'm like, I don't know. Go to a coffee shop and do your own Re-Catechism, right? But that's a good thing. It's a perpetual learning, which is what our faith should be. Yeah. Yes.
So this Re-Catechism is reaching out to the older brother who is breathing the air of orthodoxy without really having to examine it further. How did you entice them in the first place to get involved and to want to re-examine? Mm-hmm. Was it coffee and donuts, or was it an inducement of some kind? How did you spark it?
How did I bribe them?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't, there wasn't really, I don't know if it was an inducement or a bribe. It goes back to what I was talking about. It's the topics that you choose. So a lot of times what I have found, and even growing up in the church, I noticed this of my youth workers or my priest, is that a lot of times what happens is the Orthodox, we tend to think about, I know what my people need and I'm going to teach them. That's a problem, because you don't know what your people need. Why don't you ask them? I don't see a lot of parishes taking surveys, right? And I don't mean like official necessarily surveys, right? Like I don't see a lot of priests asking their people what they want to learn. I send out a survey at the end of every session. I say, what do you guys want to learn next semester? And I get a ton of different responses, and I kind of, some people, there's a greater focus on one thing, and we choose it. But you got to listen to what they want, right? So when you pick topics that are actually interesting to them, they will come, right? Sometimes they're controversial topics, right? Sometimes you're going to draw people, like different crowds. Like I've had years where completely different crowds have shown up from the other years, because like maybe some people are interested in the Orthodox way by Bishop Talis, and some people really aren't, or they've read it and they don't care. And then other people are interested in dating. That was an interesting session. And you had very different people show up to that one who I never saw again in all the years that I've been doing Re-Catechism. But they came to that because that spoke to them. Maybe in their lives at that moment they were dealing with something, right? So I think that if you're willing to engage, and you're also willing to go places where people aren't willing to go. So don't shy away from questions. Answer them openly, honestly, and be loving. And if you don't know, you don't know. I think people are looking for authenticity, like Frederica had said last night. Like if you're authentic with yourself, and you're authentic with other people, and you're and also you deal with real issues, and you're not afraid of talking about real. You're not giving the kind of the placating. We should all be good Christians. We should all be like saint whatever. It's a good thing to read the saints' lives, but talk about real problems like that people are facing. Talk about like drug addiction in the high schools, whatever, and how it's affected people's families. You know what I mean? Talk about depression. Talk about this. Talk about the things that people really want to talk about. The problem is that I think a lot of priests, and I put myself in the same group, because we're scared to talk about certain topics, or because we feel that we're not educated enough, and we're also not willing to do the legwork to actually read up on it, or sometimes, and I put myself again in this group, we lack the humility to ask someone because we don't have the skill set. We don't do it. Because I'm the priest, right? So to bring somebody else in to help me because I don't know, might attack my authority, might undermine me or something, right? A lot of priests have told me that too. They said, Father, the topics that you talk about, I can't talk about, I'm too old. I said, well, then bring in a lay catechist, somebody else who knows about these topics, and teach it with them. No, I don't want to do that. And it's like, so ego gets involved and things like that. But if you're willing to talk about what people want to talk about, I think they'll come and listen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
They can hear you.
They can hear me. I have a small voice, I apologize. Two things. First of all, thank you for your talk. I resonate with a lot of that. I'm a recent convert to Orthodoxy, but I taught and developed materials for many years in the Catholic Church. I was Catholic for a long time, And I found exactly the same thing true, which is that when you focus on the adults and the parents, they naturally share it with their children. But I wanted to add to that, everyone else they know too. I mean, when the better formed that the adults are, the more evangelism becomes a natural process of sharing, as opposed to, let's have a program where we go out and evangelize.
Yes.
You know, you can do that too, but I find that the natural evangelism tends to work better, and it comes through really forming your people well. I had a question. When do you have your Re-Catechism classes? Are they on Sundays, or are they a weeknight?
Wednesday nights.
Wednesday nights?
Wednesday night seems to work well so far. For some reason, it works well for priests too, let's face it, because we do pre-sanctifieds on Wednesday nights during Lent and things like that, and it's just in the middle of the week, and people tend to like, it's a good, comfortable day. It's not too early in the week where people are just really upset about going back to work, and it's not at the end of the week, a Friday or Saturday when people have things to do, right?
Okay, I wasn't clear on if it was an adult class that you did on Sunday morning for everybody, or...
Oh, no, Wednesday nights. Wednesday nights in the church hall.
Okay.
Yeah, people come
Another
to church.
point on that is, along with having well-formed people in your parish, is one of the things that we all need, and that children need too, is holy elders.
Yes.
Who aren't necessarily in monasteries, but who are just the people they know, their parents, their grandparents, their, the old women in the, just whoever. Yes. To have holy people around you is so inspiring. I've been inspired by those people. One more quick comment. Sorry, you just brought up a lot of stuff for me. Your Grace, who asked the Coptic bishop here, asked the question. For me, I have a different perspective because I've converted many times in my life. I was evangelical, I was Catholic, and now I'm Orthodox. I see the Orthodox world as, in some respects, being like about 100 years behind where the Catholics are. Okay, Catholics used to have ghettos. And you had the Irish Catholic ghetto, the Polish Catholic ghetto, the Italian Catholic ghetto, and none of them talked to each other, because they all spoke different languages and had different traditions. They didn't marry each other. Oh, an Irish should never marry an Italian. Yes. Well, now, 100 years later, we're all just Catholics. Okay, and yeah, we have mainly English, but we also have Latin masses. We have Spanish, where there's a lot of Spanish population. I mainly go to English. I'll go to Latin Mass occasionally when I was Catholic. If there's no other Mass I can go to, I'll go to a Spanish Mass, though I don't know Spanish, because I can still follow along. There's no feeling of division. So don't be afraid of division. Like when you institute something new, what I would suggest is, it may cause a feeling of conflict at first, but I would consider that a healthy, growing pain.
Yes.
That helps you get past your comfortable boundaries and grow into a new zone. I think that's actually a good thing. Yes. At first it can be uncomfortable, but down the line it bears a lot of fruit. Part of the reason why I am now Orthodox, there's a lot of reasons. But when I was interested in visiting a parish, I looked at the Russian website, and it had Russian on the website. Okay, I don't know Russian, never been to Russia. So, near me there was a Romanian, so I went to look at the Romanian website. It was all Romanian. Okay, I'm not going to go there because I won't even know what they're saying. Finally found an Antiochian parish. Turns out the pastor is a convert. I said, I'll feel comfortable there. He's sort of like me. So I went to visit. Well, it turns out because it's almost it's like 80 to 90% converts. It's one of these convert parishes. Their liturgy is not the traditional Antiochian or Byzantine, whatever style, or Arabic. It's all English, but it's Russian Orthodox style chant, which is familiar to Western ears.
Yes.
And it happens to be one of my personal favorite types of chant, and my background is classical music, so I resonate with the harmony. So I walked in, I felt right at home. I'm like, yes, I understand the language, I love the music, this is a great so that has a lot to do with why I am Orthodox. So I just wanted to give that different kind of perspective, because I know that this is an issue in the Orthodox world. So don't be afraid to branch out into other languages and musical styles, because that helps evangelize. Sure. All right, Thank
you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, the phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Yeah, I don't care about the squeaky wheel. And the reason why I say that is a lot of times we get scared in ministry because you have the few that are vocal who don't like what either the catechist is doing or the priest is doing, regardless of whether that's right. And so when people sometimes, the elders of the church might come and say, "Oh, Father, you can't do that," or "You shouldn't say that because people won't like it." And my answer is, my question is always, what people? Like exactly how many? We're talking about 3? We're talking about 4? Well, 2 people came and complained. I'm like, well, there's 350 people here on Sunday. That's just 2. Even if it was 10 or 20, I don't care. because in the end, what's right is what's right, and you gotta, and like you said, thank you for that. You know, there are normal growing pains, and if you know that this is going to be the best overall for your parish, you need to push it through. Like sometimes you gotta meet them where they're at, but that doesn't mean you stop doing everything just because you're afraid of being unpopular, because popularity is not everything. So, yeah.
Hi, Father. Thank you for the talk. It was very helpful. I had a question in terms of, you spoke a lot about balancing the needs, whether it be theoretical or practical, contemporary or church fathers. I'm just wondering your opinion if you've ever come across like missing that foundational piece of catechism that's needed before going into that balance of talking about contemporary issues. And if you have come across it in any of the sessions that you had, how did you make sure to address that foundational knowledge?
Good question. So foundational knowledge. So we've done sessions on that as well, right? So it's like we've done sessions on like Orthodoxy 101 kind of thing, right? But trying to keep it fresh. What I try to do is I try to space it out. So instead of saying, okay, this semester we're going to do like, a catechism book, basically, just in oral form, right? I try to take those foundational teachings and spread them out through themes, right? So for example, when we looked at for scripture, okay, like we did a whole year on scripture, but it wasn't like a classic Bible study where we were sitting there reading the books. We were looking at the overall themes of the books and how they all relate to Christ from the Old Testament to the New. And we were using some really cool videos online, from the Bible Project and things like that, and these animations and things like that for adults. And like when we want to talk about, like, for example, family, when I do the Orthodox family, well, in there you're going to get all your foundational, like what is marriage, what is baptism, right? What is our position on abortion? What is our position on, adultery? What is our position? All these kind of foundational things, they come through in those themes, right? It's the same thing like in the sessions that we were doing on, young adulthood and dating, right? In there you're going to get all the Orthodox positions on what is our discussion on premarital sex, on contraception, all these things, right? Those things, they all come out in the discussions, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that I prefer all the foundational stuff to come through organically through the conversation, so people are fully understanding and coming to their own conclusions, as opposed to me saying, okay guys, well, we believe in the Trinity, this is it, check. We believe in God the Son, God the Father, God the Spirit, right? We believe like in the resurrection, check, So I don't want to do it that way because it's been done like that before and it's dry and it's boring and people don't remember checklists, right? But they do remember conversations. They remember narrative, right? They remember stories. They remember experiences, right? And so if you can really drive home the essence of our teaching through experiences and example, I use a lot of examples in teaching in Re-Catechism where I'll use like actual real life examples so people can understand, okay, well, this is why we do this. This is why it's important to grieve in this way. This is why Orthodox have open casket. This is why, we want to come face to face with death. This is why we do these things, right? So it's more of a gradual process, right? But it all gets, I feel that it gets addressed. It gets addressed. Yeah. Does that make sense?
First of all, thank you for a great topic. I really enjoyed it. I'm also a convert and a fairly new blogger. What can I do to help my older and more experienced brothers and sisters rekindle or strengthen their relationship with Christ?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've never had anybody, I've never had a convert ask me that. How does the prodigal help the older brother? You're not a prodigal, I'm just using the example.
No.
No, you're great. Well, actually, I don't know you, so you might not be. I'm just joking. No, so that's an interesting question. I've never had anybody ask me that. I think, and because I'm just this off the top of my head because I haven't had time to really reflect on this, I think a really important part of it would be to voice your opinion in a respectful and loving way, right? But to share your experiences. So I think a lot of times the cradle Orthodox have no concept of the experience of converts. They know they're there, there's some new people in our parish, we don't know who they are, we don't really talk to them that much, right? But they're there, right? But we don't know what they've gone through or what their journey is. So the more we educate the rest of the family on, okay, like, who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you come to Orthodoxy? What was your experience? What drew you into the parish? What didn't you like about the parish and still became Orthodox? Like things like that, especially since you're a blogger, blog about that. And then it'd be good for your parish to disseminate that. disseminate those stories, right? Maybe in the church bulletin, maybe, on the church website, because it's important for everybody else to hear those stories. Because I've preached about this, it's in the myriad of iSermons that are online, right? I've spoken about this sometimes, where it's like, I remember once in Winnipeg, I don't remember how many years ago it was, I asked my congregation, I said, I was saying that we have our catechumens here, right? And they're going through this whole process, whatever, right? I go, I wonder, all of us who are cradle Orthodox, right? If we had to go, if we were not Orthodox right now, right? If we suddenly found ourselves in the same position as our catechumens, right? And you see what they have to go through to become Orthodox. Not only from a catechism point of view, like what the hoops that I make them jump through, so they can learn about the faith and, the commitment that's required, but also the problems with, family members, friendships that are destroyed, things like that, because a lot of times people don't understand when you become Orthodox, right? If I go ask yourselves who are cradle, like if you had to go through all that, would you actually choose to become Orthodox? If it wasn't just handed to you when you were a baby, right? A lot of people make some, and I said that on a Sunday. I'm like, so you got to think twice about either criticizing or giving the cold shoulder or not engaging with new people in your parish, because I said, like, a lot of people, they got to sacrifice a lot to come to Orthodoxy. They got to sacrifice sometimes everything to come to Orthodoxy, and a lot of times, like, cradle Orthodox don't understand that, and they need to understand that. So people like you need to help educate them with that, but in a loving way, not in like a, you guys were all mean to me. It's like, but you try to educate them so that they can start to see things from your perspective as well. I think that would be very beneficial to the Orthodox Church. I think it's getting better, but we have a long ways to go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you. Thank you.